I feel like opposing force, or OpFor, isn't spoken enough about in these types of videos, but when it is, people praise the enemy variety, the weapons, and all the new stuff, and they're not wrong. But what do I praise? Well, I'm glad you asked, Patrick. Sit back, relax, and grab a head crab. This is gonna be interesting. Trust me, I made the video. My favorite thing about opposing force is how it expands the universe and puts you in the shoes of, well, the opposing force. But it never feels like it forces you to be anyone in particular. Of course, you're obviously Corporal Adrian Shephard, but if you watched a previous video of mine, one thing that I enjoy about Half-Life and its expansions is that it doesn't mean that your version of the character, if you will, acts a certain way or has the same morals or values in gameplay. On a similar note, what was your Shepard like? Did he do what the government ordered, or did he take it into his own hands? Another thing that makes this even cooler is that, of course, with OpFor being developed by Gearbox, Valve has basically decided that OpFor doesn't definitively fit into either canon or non-canon. It's just not canon. Mark Laidlaw, the lead writer, also wasn't the biggest fan of the ideas of canon or non-canon in media, so to put it simply, what happens in OpFor stays in OpFor. Unless they reuse Black Mesa and Shepard, which is, well, you know, not the most likely of things actually. Adrian Shepard, that is. Not this guy. Sorry, I mean this one. Technically, in Blue Shift, you could be just as much of a murderous douche as Gordon, aside from the fact that you do have to save Rosenberg and the crew. But Barney appears in Half-Life 2 as a hero, so that would probably mean that any of the murders you committed in Blue Shift were not really canon, so to speak. Since Shepard doesn't appear again, we can assume that everything is as we left it. Black Mesa's nuked, and Shepard is either the typical cleanup grunt, a tragic hero who must follow orders, or simply a hero who stands up against the man and decides that his chances of survival are slim, and so he may as well disobey his orders just this once and do what he knows is right. This is how Valve works. Strange, I know. So technically, from this, many timelines are created, but technically they're also not. Valve never said any of this was canon, just not that it wasn't, or rather, they said that it wasn't not. Thanks, Mark, you really made this easy for me. Also, to the average player, the grunts may seem like faceless sadists who scoot from room to room, killing whatever or whoever they come into contact with. This, of course, isn't the case. In typical Half-Life fashion, it's darker and more complicated than you may think. And I mean, you know what, this isn't far from life. There aren't really any bad guys throughout the first game, apart from, I guess, the government and possibly the G-Man, but we don't really know. Oh wow, that's a good video idea. I mean, moving on. First of all, let's get the basic point out of the way. The HECU are deployed under strict orders from the government. Disobeying orders is not an option. These orders were also very sudden. We can work this out by reading Shepard's diary entries, specifically the ones on May the 9th and May the 15th. May the 9th details that Shepard has been told he and his squad must become masters of indoor combat in 7 days. No explanation. The name Black Mesa has been thrown around, but everyone suspects it'll be pretty mundane. He notes that it's pretty strange, but kind of hopes it doesn't happen because the mission doesn't seem to have much excitement potential, and that he'd rather hold out for something with much more likelihood of combat. Now that, my friends, is some foreshadowing or dramatic irony there, if I have ever seen it. Anyway, you're probably wondering where this is all going. My point is that the Marines went in a day later than that diary entry and wouldn't have been prepared for the horrors they ended up fighting, both in terms of what to expect and in terms of psychological damage. Nothing like this was explained to them. The insertion of the soldiers is no cakewalk. They're shown the dangers of this place pretty quickly, but their orders stand. However, some soldiers, including Shepard, didn't actually get the orders, which could, in theory, confuse this whole storyline. What the soldiers are likely experiencing at this level could be some mix of compliance and the agentic state. Compliance is the least personal form of conformity and extends to actions in public, but your core values and beliefs are still the same. And it's hard to know if we can extrapolate this to mass murder, such as what the Marines commit in the game, but it's certainly the easiest way to label it. We can see an example of this in-game. One soldier says, "I didn't sign up for this shit. Monsters, sure, but civilians? Who ordered this operation anyway?" You see, he doesn't like this, but orders are orders, right? A lot of Marines must have thought this, but they did nothing to stop the murder of the poor scientists. The soldiers were scared and unsure of how to fight these aliens, much like how the Viet Cong's guerrilla tactics instilled panic, hysteria, and mass killings. So most of the Marines would see no alternative to following orders, and wouldn't be able to cope with the amount of bloodshed, human and alien alike. And that's where the main theme of Half-Life comes in. Shepard is the right man in the wrong place. The only one with the guts to make a difference. He's no better off than his peers, and he's a mere corporal, but he has the ability to tear himself away from the authoritarian personalities of the rest of the soldiers. Or does he? It's all determined by the player. You have the ability to kill scientists, but also the ability to kill the people you trained with in order to, in your mind, save said scientists. You can also kill everyone and everything, at least as soon as they're no longer useful. Like I said, this is very similar to Gordon's situation, but Gordon isn't level with everyone else. He has his suit. The HECU are all supplied with powerful equipment as standard. They're all trained the same. Shepard is simply able to take his own path to success, ignoring orders for survival and for what's morally right. Or he could be the same as the others, a machine that follows orders, using scientists and guards to advance through the facility to fight for survival. He needn't spare any of them. Or a particularly impulsive player may play a damaged Shepard who kills everyone. We only really get to play him properly after the crash and after the horrors he witnesses before he comes to. Maybe in theory that could change him, altering his actions later in the game. Gordon does what he must to survive, and our actions are a projection of our morals in games, typically. He's heralded as a hero in the sequel, and we're given no chance to act otherwise. Gordon may as well not even be silent in the second game as far as I'm concerned. Barney, however you play him, is canonically, or as canon as Half-Life gets, a hero. He saves lives and continues to do so in the sequel. Shepard is possibly the most open-ended character we play in the series, if nothing else, simply for the lack of follow-up content to prove that any one playstyle is the real Shepard. It's entirely player-determined. This, in theory, means that Adrian's character handles the whole silent protagonist thing even better than Gordon's. Your choices are, so far, all canon in a way. And this is why I think Adrian Shepard is officially the coolest or most interesting character you can play in the Half-Life series to date. Well, I say to date as if there's ever going to be another Half-Life game. My mistake. Yeah, happy E3 guys. But anyway, that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, subscribing, and maybe dropping a nice comment about how much you love pasta. Maybe noodles. And if you really want to help me out, then by all means don't be afraid to share this content to your friends or to social media. While we're talking about social media, check mine out in the description below. Have a great day.